Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast, powered by the Huntsville Madison County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Clark Dunn. Huntsville, Alabama is known as a smart place, but really, what's so smart about it? In this podcast, we will talk to the leaders of Huntsville's economic and cultural development to answer that question. From rockets to genomics, from cyber to music, What's So Smart will explore the visionary and data-driven initiatives that make Huntsville so smart. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Well, welcome to the What's So Smart podcast. Super excited to have you here today. Would you like to introduce yourself, and we'll get started there?
Awesome. Thank you, Clark, for having me. My name is Ashley Ramirez, and I am the founder and creator of Mason Dixon Bakery and Bistro here in Huntsville.
And so your journey here to Huntsville wasn't because you wanted to open up a restaurant. You came here with chemistry in mind. Talk a little bit about that journey to get here to Huntsville and kind of how the things kind of aligned and this concept for Mason Dixon came about.
Yeah, certainly. So as I was working on my doctorate in chemistry at Duke in North Carolina, I was part of a fellowship program where basically after your graduate school degree, you got placed at a military lab or facility to continue on in some form of research and basically pay back your time for them providing you a small stipend while you're in graduate school. And so I was born and raised in a small town in Maryland and worked my way down to North Carolina for both undergrad and my doctorate. And then you had a little bit of say about where you ended up, but not really. And so my background was in polymer chemistry, and there is an affiliation with polymers and rocket fuel. And so I ended up getting placed down here in Huntsville, Alabama to take a position at Redstone Arsenal.
Wow.
When I was in North Carolina, I knew nothing about Huntsville. Okay. I got the letter and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm moving to Alabama.
And this was like 2011, 2012?
Yeah, this was 2012.
2012.
And I was terrified. I was like,
I'm moving to Alabama.
What is even there?
Yeah.
I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, so big city, lots to do. And it was like, okay, well, we're just going to give this a shot and see what it's all about. Life had a little bit of other plans for me, and I ended up in Huntsville, Alabama, but I did not end up on the Arsenal.
Yeah.
When I moved down here, it was right in the middle of sequestration, and my funding for the project that I was supposed to be on got cut as part of all of the budget cuts. So I basically got a call on Friday. I was supposed to start work on Monday. Oh, I'm so sorry. We don't have a job for you.
Wow. And you've moved and you've basically started this life now in Huntsville with this idea of working on the Arsenal and doing chemistry and being in that sphere. And now you are sitting at home and thinking, what am I going to do now in Huntsville?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Had sold the house in North Carolina, wasn't going back.
Yeah,
didn't have anything to go back to.
I'm here now. What am I going to do? And so this idea for Mason Dixon kind of spawned pretty quickly after that. Talk a little bit about why opening up a gluten-free restaurant was a passion for you, kind of with a diagnosis that you had while you were at Duke, I believe. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that and then kind of what you started doing to begin with to make Mason Dixon a thing.
Certainly, yeah. So I was diagnosed with celiac disease as a senior in college and didn't fully accept it probably until I was about a year or two into graduate school. And I have always been a very active person. I have loved carbs. Carbs are my love language.
Yes.
And so when I first got the diagnosis, I was very torn. And it took me a long time to kind of transfer over to a gluten-free lifestyle because of the fact that I did love pasta and bread so much. And what was available at the time of 2000, this would have been 2008.
Wow.
Was nothing, basically.
There was no gluten-free section in the stores.
It wasn't, And then everything that was, the little bit that was the very stereotypical cardboard, flavorless, that everybody still thinks of for gluten-free, which definitely isn't the case anymore. But with my background in science, I've always loved baking, cooking, recipe development, cooking and baking are chemistry. That's everything that happens when you cook and bake are chemical reactions. So it's just, I joke and say that now I get to do chemistry that I can actually eat as opposed to poisonous stuff. So it's a lot more fun that way. But when I moved down here to Huntsville and then everything kind of fell apart, it was that spring. And, I had been playing around with baking some stuff, taking it to different, friends, offices,
Mm,
etc. And I was really just bored and
yeah.
trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was coming out of graduate school, I was working 80 hours a week, and then all of a sudden I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So, somebody threw out to me like, hey, you should go set up at the farmers market and bake
Mm,
some stuff and at least tie over time until you figure out
yeah.
what you're going to do. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And so at the time, the cottage law wasn't in place yet.
Mm.
And probably thankfully it wasn't, because I actually had to go through the process of renting a commercial kitchen in
Wow.
order to bake for the farmer's market. And I mean, for some reason, I jumped all in with
You're like,
this.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I can
Yeah.
do this.
Rent, and I have a rent and a mortgage. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Why not?
why not? um, so, but because I had the commercial kitchen space, I think it forced me to, think of it more like a business
Mm,
than just a hobby or something to buy time, or, because I had rent, I had
mm,
utilities, I had all of the additional expenses that I had to plan for and
mm,
kind of work around. So that's kind of a blessing in disguise there. But started out April of 2013
mm.
in the Green Street Market and the Madison City Farmers Market.
Okay.
So Thursdays and Saturdays. And, you know, when I first moved down here, I realized that there was both a lack of availability of allergen friendly products
Mm,
as well as a lack of knowledge about allergies and how to handle them, and different dietary restrictions that maybe people just assume that everything is an anaphylaxis reaction, which
mm,
isn't necessarily the case. So there really just wasn't a lot available in the local community. And so anytime you're posed with that situation, it's one of two things. Either there isn't a need for
mm.
that component in the local market, or there's a need and nobody has met it yet.
Yeah.
So the farmers market was really and truly kind of my test for that, to see, which is it here in
Mm.
Huntsville? Is there just not a need? Am I an anomaly?
Yeah.
And
Am I the only one with celiac
yeah,
in the whole Madison County?
it,
Maybe,
maybe
but probably
it's
not.
possible. Probably not. And so that first year at the farmers market really proved that it was the latter,
Mm,
that there was a huge need and just nobody had addressed it
yeah.
yet. So, Mason Dixon was started as this passion project
Mm,
for me, truly, and has remained a passion project over the years of bringing convenience to allergen friendly foods, bringing awareness to allergies
mm,
and dietary restrictions, and even just different lifestyle choices, and an awareness that food is more than just something that we eat.
mm,
Food is a fuel. It's what powers us. It's what allows us to get up every day and do the things that we love. And just really trying to focus in on the quality of that food and trying to educate people that not every food source is the same.
mm.
And you need to be aware of it and aware of what you're eating.
Yeah. And Mason Dixon's gone through a, many evolutions, and like kind of you've grown a ton, obviously, in the 12 years you've been around. I think the first commercial kitchen was on South Parkway,
Yep.
kind of near Weatherly Road.
Yep.
And then you quickly outgrew that in a few years and moved to the location on the corner of Whitesburg and Bob Wallace.
Right.
You were there for how long were you there at that space?
We were there for about 8 years.
Okay.
We
And
weathered
then,
COVID through
yes.
there, which we had actually started looking for a new space right before COVID hit.
Oh, wow.
And thank goodness everything didn't line up
Yeah.
in time, because that would have been a really hard transition for us. Taking on a bigger space, more rent and everything, and
Yes.
surviving that storm. So right after we kind of got through the heart of
Mm.
COVID is when that started to look
Yeah.
again.
And then like at 2023 or so is when you opened and you moved to the current location, which basically, I mean, expanded into being more than just a catered baked goods. Talk a little bit about how that evolution, and that as you kind of saw that this is something that the community needs, that it's not just, hey, that no one else enjoys this, eats gluten free,
Right.
has dietary restrictions, that this is something that we need to offer more than just, baked goods, cupcakes, cakes, whatever it might be. And you've kind of evolved that into being more of a full service restaurant.
Certainly, yeah. So, when when you're starting a business and growing a business, there's kind of two different routes that you can take for it. You can either have organic growth or you can have inorganic growth. Through all the years of Mason Dixon, we focused on organic growth, and meaning that you basically start with something, you grow it a little bit, you find yourself, you grow it more,
Mm.
and that kind of slow growth. One business model is not better than the other. It just depends on your situation and your setting and what your ultimate goals are. But that really kind of speaks to the way that Mason Dixon has evolved over the years. We started at my spot down on Weatherly Drive or South Parkway, the rent was $750 a month. Like
Wow.
that's when I was working out of the, at the farmer's market.
And it was just farmers markets at the time.
Just
it
farmers
was no
markets.
sit down, come in. Like I think you could I remember going into that location a few times, and it was just like a baked goods case that basically had whatever cupcakes you had, cookies you had, and any cakes, and that was pretty much it.
Yep.
Wow.
Worked mostly by order, but that's where we started, and we could manage $750 a month for commercial kitchen space, and then moved to Whitesburg, and that's when we actually added the restaurant component in, was at Whitesburg, and stayed there until we outgrew that space and we added the catering component. And then that's really what kind of pushed us over the edge of needing more space because the kitchen was only so big.
Yeah.
And so we went from about a 1,700 square foot space at Whitesburg to now we're in 5,400 square feet at Church Street. So we tripled our footprint. And, it's been the best move for us for sure. The catering side of the business has grown. We were named both 23 and 24 now. We just found out as the Caterer of the Year here in Huntsville by Huntsville Event Magazine. And so we're really excited about that and just the growth that's going to allow.
Yeah. And it sounds like this entrepreneurial journey you had is not something that you necessarily envisioned when you moved here to Huntsville. Yeah. Is there lessons learned or any advice you would give to people that maybe are having that, hey, maybe I'm going to the farmers markets and I'm doing this thing on the side. I still have my 9 to 5, starting seeing success. Yeah. What sort of advice would you give them?
So I think there's two different pieces. Number one is patience. I think that's of anything the last 12 years has taught me is that you have to be patient. You have to be patient for success. You have to be patient for growth. You have to be patient with the community. I think the other big piece is that leading with both your heart and your head and knowing when to trust one more than the other. We, in the 12 years, we haven't had all successes. We've had quite a few failures along the way, but I've learned far more from the failures, to be honest with you, than any of the successes that I've learned from. Probably the biggest one for me with leading with your heart versus your head. We had a shop in Birmingham for about 15 months. We were down in Homewood. I opened the store in Birmingham. I guess it was third quarter of 2017 and closed the Birmingham store fourth quarter of 2018. And that was probably the hardest decision that I had to make. Birmingham, I think, could have been successful long term, but it was pulling so much of me. It was draining so much out of Huntsville that it just wasn't the right move.
It was hard to be sustainable at that time.
And I had to make that call to close the doors in Birmingham. And that was probably the hardest decision. But I don't think that Huntsville would be where it was today if I had stayed. And so my heart was telling me like, no, like don't, in some ways I felt like I was giving up. I was quitting. But really it was a business decision. And sometimes in those hard business decisions, you've got to just shut your heart down and lead with your head. Yeah. But then there's other times in the business that compassion has to go through your employees. You have to care. Like they are the ones that keep the doors open and everything running day in and day out. And so you can't be so strict business minded that you lose your heart. But then figuring out which one to listen to, which one tips the scale in each decision is probably one of the hardest things. But once you can figure that out and learn, which way to go, it makes making decisions a little bit easier.
Yeah. And it's, being a business owner and being in the restaurant industry, it's a very, things change quickly, and what's needed to support the community changes. Probably what you were like, obviously what you were doing in 2013 is part of what you're doing today in
Right.
2025,
Yeah.
but you've definitely done a lot more and you've expanded. And like you said, things have not worked out, but you've been able to kind of pivot
Yeah.
and make the next right decision. Being the business owner, being the founder, you're
Yeah.
kind of always in the business, and it's hard to kind of have free time outside of the business.
Yeah.
When you do have the availability to, step out of Mason Dixon, be at home, be with family, be with friends, what is it that you spend your time doing here in Huntsville and that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, certainly. I think my favorite thing about Huntsville that is so often taken for granted is Montesano.
Mm.
We have the mountains right here. It's super accessible. You get a yearly pass for like $100
Yeah.
or something. You can go up there anytime you want. So my whole family, we're big outdoor people. We love to hike. We love to mountain bike. So Montesano is probably number one. Number two is we're a big game board, card game puzzle family. And so there's always a stack of, let's see, this right now, it's been Uno No Mercy,
Okay.
which is really a fun version
Haven't
of,
played that one yet.
yeah,
Okay.
it's intense.
Okay. Sounds like it.
It gets a little vicious. Like the family's gotten a little heated over some
bet.
things. So, really just spending quality time. I think that being a business owner, you are, depending on your line of work, you are around either a lot of people or a few people, but it's a very demanding interaction.
Mm.
There's a lot of energy that's put into it. And so I think I have a small group of close-knit friends. My network is not huge,
Yeah.
It's very small intentionally, and just really focus on that quality time together with friends and
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. And I think, it is finding that. I think as your team has grown, I would assume too, you've been able to kind of offload some of the things that you were doing because you've had people that kind of fit that void and
Yeah.
and fit that service maybe even better than what you would have done,
Mhm.
and you're able to kind of focus on more of the high level stuff. Huntsville is a pretty smart place, and you came here to do chemistry, but
Yeah.
you've obviously the work you do with Mason Dixon is smart work. What do you think makes Huntsville such a unique space, and that maybe helped make Mason Dixon so successful?
Certainly. When I first moved here, oh gosh, in the first or second year, I did a TED talk, and I think I said something along the lines of, you know, I thought to myself, you want to open a gluten-free bakery in the heart of the South where like fried chicken and buttermilk biscuits rule. Like, what are you even
Yeah.
thinking? Huntsville's so unique, though. We are in the heart of the South, but it's innovative, it's progressive, it's growing.
Mm.
It the city fosters change,
Mm.
which is probably one of the most exciting things for me being here is that we are not stagnant. Like we
Mm.
haven't reached where we want to be
Yeah.
yet. And the support for new things coming in, be it new small businesses or new ideas or development of of just social activities to do, it's incredible.
Mm.
It's really exciting just to be part of a community that is so excited to grow and foster change.
Mm.
I think that's what I love the most. We are a smart city. I
Mm.
moved here from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I compare Huntsville to a baby Raleigh. I mean, we're not to the size that Raleigh is, but
Mm.
even in my 12 years of being here, how much we've changed and grown, and how many more opportunities there are here than there were. And we're not stopping
Mm-mm.
anytime soon.
No, it has not slowed down,
It-
and in the in the 13 years you've been here, I mean, it's just progressively gotten more and more. And I think in the last few years, it's really where there's still those pockets of Huntsville that remind me of what it was 10, 15 years
Yep.
ago. There
Yep.
still is those, but there's also those areas and those pockets, especially downtown, that you come in, and it's like I'm here a lot, but every time I come, I feel like I see a new thing happening and a new opening and a new this and a new
Yeah.
that, which is exciting because it's it just shows that we're continuously looking to improve as a city as a
Certainly.
whole, and being able to offer new and exciting things. During your 12 years of running Mason Dixon, you've probably interacted and had some pretty cool stories to tell.
Yeah.
Is there one particular story of an interaction or a moment that sticks out among the rest?
Certainly. I think that one of my favorite memories that's happened, and now it's happened a couple times over, but over the years, I've developed a relationship, professionally with Dr. Frederick. He's the head of the propulsion research at UAH.
Wow.
And he is a customer. We've catered for him several times, but he is one of Mason Dixon's biggest fans for sure. And he brought me a hat one day that said, UAH Propulsion Research Lab. And that's like my hat now at work. I wear it all the time. And one day, Dr. Frederick walked into the shop with a Mason Dixon hat on. So I came out from the back.
Wow.
Having my UAH Propulsion Research Lab hat on. He had on his Mason Dixon hat. And we took a picture together.
That's amazing.
And we said, rocket scientists who wear many hats. And that is like the epitome of Huntsville to me, in the sense that there are people that are in their professional world. They have their hobbies. They have their passions. And probably my favorite thing about Huntsville is the community and how much we support one another. I've seen that in the small business community here, where it's not competition. We collaborate. We help each other. We support each other. We're each other's biggest cheerleaders. And that's incredible. This is the only city that I've owned a business in, so I can't speak certainly on that, but I can't imagine that it's like that everywhere. And so that is so fun to me to see the level of community and support that there is here for different things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason that he has to, be a supporter of Mason Dixon. He loves what we do. And it's really neat to have that.
And I think Huntsville, like you said, is it's one of the amount of conversations you'll have with people that are in, science related things, engineering, computer engineering, any sort of engineering realm within Huntsville, because there's quite a few of them. The amount of hobbies they have outside of it is absurd. Like there's so many, and like some of the skills they have in those, it's like, this is like incredible. Like, this is like the best I've seen. And it's like, no, I just do it on the side. I just didn't do it out of my garage. It's like, that's amazing. And I completely agree. I think Huntsville is one of those cities that collaboration is key, and that they've really fostered collaboration. I think there's been so many different organizations that have been in place to help foster that. And then having those where it is easy to text another owner of a restaurant and ask a question, or, hey, I'm out of this. Do you happen to have it until our order comes in next day? Like that happens, and it's easy.
It's easy. I mean, we had through some of the really bad storms we had last year, we lost power for like 2 days, and I texted another restaurant owner and I was like, we've got stuff that like I need a cooler, and they're like, yeah, we'll move stuff over. You can have half of ours. And it's like we loaded everything up, put it in the cooler. It's amazing. It's why things work here. I think it's why we're able to grow so fast, is because I can only imagine if it's like that in my direct field, the amount of collaboration that goes on in the sciences and the engineering department through companies here, and hearing contracts that are awarded to, a prime and a sub, and, everybody works together. Yeah. We're all on the same team, which is amazing, because that's how things work. Yeah. You think of a community almost like a business, and I think we have it right. Yeah,
for sure. And I think when everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction, we're not trying to go in opposite directions. Yeah. Everyone knows sort of the target that we're trying to hit, and the community at large is able to help support each individual person or each individual business to help them get farther that direction. But I appreciate you being here today. I think, your journey of entrepreneurship with Mason Dixon is incredible to see. I think the growth, I mean, I remember going to one of the first farmers markets you were at, and then now seeing you in the restaurant, and the amount of growth you had is incredible. We'll be sure to have everything in the episode notes for information on Mason Dixon, but I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks so much, Clark. It's lovely as always.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed hearing more about what makes Huntsville so smart.